welcome back to my World Cup over coffee talks. It's midnight at the moment because I'm just about to watch the second half of Saudi Arabia versus Uruguay. The pundits have been talking how bad the the match. How Uruguay being really poor in not doing their jobs so far. Anyway, speaking of jobs, over the weekend there were some games like Brazil when they played against Morocco. Morocco, I thought they were the best team because they played better than Brazil. And Brazil, I thought they should have won that game, but it's all for Morocco. So a great point gained. And speaking of draws, I was at work at the time, so I didn't really, I had to focus on my job. And then when I came home and saw the result, Cape Verde, they are the first timers in the World Cup ever. And they managed to get a point against the European champions, Spain. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. A 0-0 draw. How can that be? You know, I don't really know much about Cape Verde. They are, the country just off Africa, a small island, and they managed to get a point. That is like, you could be calling a national holiday for that. That is like unbelievable. Unbelievable. So what do you think? What do you think so far? What do you think of the hydration breaks? Does it really interrupt the momentum when a team is losing and then you go on to these hydration breaks, drinking water, whatever they're drinking, being by their sponsored brands, and then after that they go on to equalise in the game. Is it definitely for health and safety because of the heat of the American climate, or is it really for the efforts trying to make it like 4 quarters like you do in the NFL, American football? So it's it. What do you think in the comments? So yes, well, and speaking of good football, some of the goals they scored is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And some of the goalkeeper saves as well. I've noticed some of the formations forming like the classic 4-4-2 low block football, and I have noticed some of the teams are pressing more, trying to get onto the ball, front foot, but it seems to be, to me, is patient football. But who knows? So, who knows? So, what team are you supporting? Are you supporting, like South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, obviously Uruguay, Saudi Arabia? In England, I'll be doing another video about England. I'll probably do a reaction video to that one when they play against Croatia. There's been a lot of rumours and talks about how they're going to do the build up to that game, how they're going to prepare for that game. But it is what it is. So, yeah, let's do it. And speaking of players, I was really impressed by the guy called John, the guy who was playing for his country called Curacao. I think that's how you pronounce it. A Dutch Caribbean island. and I know they lost to Germany 7-1. You're also first timers in the World Cup. I was very impressed with your player. He seemed like he's like one of the best players. I just feel that, hopefully you will do go on to maybe get a point or get a win. But, if you can get more goals, it will be something for your little country, your little island. Hopefully I will come down and visit, because you do have some interesting football history behind it. So, yes, I'm just about to watch the second half of Saudi Arabia versus Uruguay. So far, they're just putting on Nunes and Vina. They're just taking off. Oh, right, they're just taking off Nunes and Vina and just putting on some of the players. Bit difficult to pronounce their names. So, yes, hopefully, oh yes, Sanabria and Kano Nobi. I think that's how you pronounce their names. Uruguay have a very, very interesting history, because they won the World Cup back in 1930, the first ever World Cup to be played, and it was hosted in Uruguay. But over the years, over their, if you look at their World Cup history, you would have thought, yeah, they could have been, could have go on to try and win something. I think they probably won a few Copa Americas, which is like the American version of, the European, of the Euros championship. So, but we'll see. We'll see at the moment if will they get a goal and equalise just before the second hydration break, or will they wait until the next, until the second hydration break and see if this trend sort of works? Oh, what a save! What a save! The Saudi Arabian goalkeeper, he is like a really good goalkeeper. His reaction is like bang on. So, the Saudi Arabians, I want to ask you something. How do you feel that your country has progressed in terms of football? You did really well 4 years ago when you beat Argentina 2-1. And then it was a big shock to the Argentinians' hearts. And, they weren't really expecting to have that loss in the first game, in the first group game. But then they went on to win the World Cup from there. Do you think Saudi Arabia have got the team to really go on to, to progress into the knockout stages and represent the, the Middle East? Obviously, you got the UAE teams, but obviously they're not there. But, are you the better teams than you were 4 years ago, or than the teams that you had in the past? So it's interesting for me to find out. So yes, have there been any teams that I think they could win the World Cup from the first group games? At the moment, I am very surprised about Brazil because Brazil, I've really thought they would have, would have get 3 points, a win against Morocco. Morocco, I thought Morocco were the better team, and I'm really impressed by Morocco because over the years they have been building the teams and they had so many setbacks and stuff. But it seems like, a lot of African teams, you have a lot of African players who play in the top 5 European leagues, and then they take back their experiences to their countries and say, this is how we should be playing. Obviously, they need to play the African way. They do it in the African way. I'm very impressed with that. I'm impressed with Morocco. South Africa, when I watched their first group game, I was like, they can play football. Obviously, their goalkeeper, they said that their goalkeeper was the best goalkeeper in all of Africa. I do agree with that because he was a good goalkeeper. But your defence was not as hard as the Table Mountain, so you need to improve. You were too slow in getting the ball out. Obviously, they will learn a lot from their first group game, and they need to improve quickly for their second games. So yeah, there are lessons to be learned for South Africa. So that's what I think at the moment for South Africa. England's playing on Wednesday nights in our British time. So that will be interesting to see how England will approach Croatia and how Croatia will approach the game without Luka Modric because I think he has retired. So it will be very, very, very interesting to see how that game will be because, England have obviously, we haven't got any flair, creative players. It's in the mould of and the image of Thomas Tuchel style of football. So I think we will win 1-0 against Croatia. And I think it will be a good game to watch. But, it's about how do we handle the heat, handle the hydration breaks, and how do you feel approaching the game. Speaking of managers, I'm just seeing the footage of Marco Bielsa, the guy who's now the manager of Uruguay. I remember when he was at Leeds, obviously he had, controversial beginnings I think it was in the Championship, where they got caught for spying on the other team. But the way he approached in that press conference and sort of told the whole Championship teams were like, you're this, you're that, you're that. In the Premier League, I like the way he used the players who are not all econistic and all those sort of things. I like the way he brought the team from working as a team, playing for each other sort of thing. I like that approach, and it seems very similar to what he has built with Uruguay. Obviously, they're playing a bit rubbish at the moment, but you never know. They might get a goal in any moment now. Yeah, I'm enjoying the World Cup. I had I was going to say coffee, but I had a coffee this morning, and I just had a cup of tea to keep me awake. Because I'm not going to watch the next game, Iran versus New Zealand. That will be a good game, I think, but that's like at 2 o'clock in the morning here. And speaking of Iran, I know I don't really want to mention the war, what's going on. I just want to focus on the football side of things. I know you have a great team at the moment in the Middle East. Yeah, I know politics and all that. I'm going to put it to one side. You do have a good team. Will you beat New Zealand? I say New Zealand, you have Chris Wood, who plays for Nottingham Forest as the great forward. I don't really know much about New Zealand, but I know that some are part timers. You know, some of them will work in the bank and some work in odd jobs. I know some New Zealanders players do play in the European leagues. So yeah, it is a game to watch. I'm not sure about the Iranians. I know that there are some Iranians playing in Europe, but I know, I know the war has affected that whole region. So yeah, I don't want to really mention too much on that. So yes, I also want to talk about. I'm very impressed with your stadiums in Canada, Mexico, and in obviously United States of America. Um, I'm very impressed with the atmosphere, especially the Mexican fans. I am very impressed. So, my question to you guys: are you enjoying the World Cup? What do you think of the hydration breaks? And who is your standout player so far? And I'll see you all for the next one.